It's been raining all throughout the day and all throughout the night. Today, it's round 2 of the Indy Karting Challenge from K1 Circuit, Whiteland, and Whiteland, Indiana. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's coverage of the Indy Karting Challenge here on Kart Chaser. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside me is Nate Dean as we are set for a wet day of racing, to say the very least. Nate, it should be interesting to see how these drivers handle the rain. These drivers, meanwhile, are in the midst of their qualifying sessions today. The mini and micros lead things off for the day as we are in the midst of what's going to be a wet day for the session. Already, these drivers are in the midst of a busy day when it comes to these weather conditions. James Fox currently leading the way in session. Patrick McNeely, Diesel Maxwell among some of the top drivers in the sessions. As we zoom around the racetrack right now, these drivers trying to see what they can do with the course these next few minutes to see if they're going to be able to qualify up towards the front today for the second round of the season. As these drivers get themselves sorted, the top time right now, Fox to 47.035. Maxwell 48.9. Now moving up the board is Grayson Waite. He moves up to second in the qualifying session for the micros at the moment. So, micros followed by minis, then the 206 mediums will be on the racetrack. KA Junior, KA Senior / Masters, the 206 Legends and Supermasters will be how they're laid out for the morning portion of the session here today. And Nate, today is going to be an interesting time to see how these drivers fare out with the weather conditions. And with this track, we'll touch upon that a lot more. It is wet to the point where cars are spinning in the final corner. They had to make some track adjustments here today in terms of layout. We'll be bringing essentially what is called for this layout today Pro Circuit with 2 clockwise with cut through is the layout utilized by the drivers here today for this one. So, getting all set ready for the rest of these drivers to finish up their grouping in the next couple seconds here. Right now, these drivers finishing up in the 46-second bracket for this part of the qualifying session, as checker flags should be waving pretty soon for these drivers. So far in the season, when it comes to point standings in the micros, was coming in today, James Fox swept the races in round number 1 to begin things for the season. Patrick McNeely, second in points, 224 points on the calendar to Fox's 250. Diesel Maxwell has 220 points on the season. That's after a second in the heat and a third in the final last time out. Miles Hale and Harper Smith, but they are starters. Start of the season, 7 drivers are on track for reference sake for this session here today. Checker flag now being displayed. Originally, drivers were having a start zone situation at the other side of the racetrack, but they will be utilizing the front straightaway for today's starts with the weather conditions. Fox improves his time to a 46.7 in the session. All right, Berger stays in second. Grayson Waite stays in the third spot, and Maxwell and McNeely round out the top 5. Mateus Guzman and Miles Hale are the other drivers on track in this group. See them as they cross the stripe now as they finish up their session here. Some fair big distancing gaps here in this one today. It's going to be tricky in terms of grip levels, to say the very least. Some people made reference to it almost being like racing with boats today. Of course, the track going to be covered in wet stuff all throughout the day today. It is a bit more of a drier period for now with cloud cover, but it's expected to shower throughout the day today. Light rain and full rain, a part of the forecast here at the racetrack. Our next group is now ready to go, and this involves your minis. Kason Hendrickson leading the way in the point standings coming into today. Got the full sweep in round one over Will Feinsteiner and Lincoln Willie. Feinsteiner and Willie second and third respectively in the point standings. Then it's late someone out in the fourth spot. Blake Martinez in the top five of the point standings entering today. Miller Ruza and Christopher Heinzen are the seven drivers in the standings coming into today. We do have some different drivers appearing today for this race. Daniel Dragunov amongst the different starters in the field for the minis today for the rainy one. And mind you, just a few people in session for the minis today. Only the three karts on the track. Attendance, of course, being impacted by the weather conditions and some of the conditions on the roads coming here to the facility here in Whiteland, Indiana. Very thankful for those who are able to make it to the race today, to be able to battle through the conditions and in some cases have some fun. Lots of drivers, when reaching out through the community in the past day or so, did mention that they were looking very much forward, actually, to running in the rain. Different feeling compared to some of the other conditions that you can see compared to a sunny time here at K1 Circuit Whiteland. See, at least the full barriers are all around the racetrack to make sure the drivers don't go too far into the muddy stuff as well. 46-4 is the first time. Up at the top of the board, Dragunov leading the way in session over Chase Call. Blake Martinez is the other driver at the racetrack here today for this class. Follow along and search around with these drivers. Of course, Dragunov, one of the people who was a part of the Nitro Motorsports karting program last year. That's seen some impressive runs from those drivers, including in Sportsman Division Racing and some of their various divisions where he's shown good speed there. And now is amongst the drivers that look to showcase their speed today here in Whiteland. Under 2 minutes ago in this session for these drivers at the moment here at K1 Circuit. Keep in mind when it comes to scheduling throughout this season, our second round of the season, of course, today, but 2 races in the month of May, 2 in the month of June, including a doubleheader weekend. Then it's all the way to August until the next time on the racetrack for a doubleheader weekend. September, October with 2 dates. November closes out the season on November the 1st specifically. Right now, seeing Dragunov, Call, and Martinez trying to continue to sort around the racetrack. Call needs to find 1.6 seconds or so wants to try and take the pole time. Last time by, set a 48.156. His best time is a 48.124 on the session. See the two karts grouped together and how big the separation can get here at the racetrack here today in amongst the rainy conditions. This time by, Dragunov pulling away from Martinez, not able to put up a good time. Martinez put up a time 3 seconds slower than Dragunov, as Dragunov found a lot of grip and speed in the final sector. Cole's been on his own throughout the session in his blue kart, mind you, as well as things get all settled in around this racetrack. Remember, we're going behind the paywall later on today for the heats and for the finals. Be sure to subscribe and follow along with the action today here on Kart Chaser if you want to keep an eye on these classes today. Checker flag waves in session. So Dragunov puts up a 46.143. That's the top time of the session. Blake Martinez only got to the 49 flats. Chase Call not able to improve his time. Stayed in the 48 ones for his best in that session. Now let's try and see if we can bring in Nate Dean in terms of discussion. Nate, a rainy one today here in Whiteland, Indiana. Your thoughts on racing in the rain for these conditions today? Boy, we're still working on something technical-wise in that regard. Our apologies there as we continue on with the drivers making their way into the garage area. So our next grouping on the racetrack will be 206 medium. 206 medium getting set to go for their respective qualifying session as they get the access out from the gates to be able to go on the racetrack now. A few drivers in their class looking to see what can happen here in the rainy stuff. We'll see what they are able to put down. Evan Corkodale leading the way in the points with the sweep last time out. Braden Hebert finished off in second with 225 points, sweeping seconds in the day. Levi Wilbur was third last time out as well. Logan Lynch and Nick Patton amongst the top 5 drivers as well on the season. Qualifying session is underway. Eber, Wilbur, Logan Lynch, Nick Patton are your drivers on the racetrack, making their way around for the qualifying session. See where a lot of these distances are starting to build up. Usually you might see a bit of a draft factor, but today it's all going to be about how comfortable these drivers fare on the track. That's a little uncomfortable with the drift in the grass. Hold on to it. Believe that was Lynch that may have driven off the racing circuit. As Heber puts up a 48.7 to start off the session. Lynch, for that ride in the grass, went in the 51.9s to begin the group. We do have one more driver, and Andrew Goldman, who's on the other side of the circuit as well for the mediums. Nate, do you have a copy? Try that one more moment in a second. We apologize for that technical difficulty right now. So we continue on with qualifying. See just how dark it is in terms of some of the visuals here at the racetrack today. Going to be pretty tough when it comes to lighting later on today, potentially. We did have a delay of at least an hour, hour and a half due to thunderstorms in the area. Of course, the thunder's now driven off, and we have one more kart joining in on the fun for this session as well, it looks like. So some of the drivers just trying to get themselves at least on the track to put up a time to get some track position for what's going to be a tough one for these drivers today. In theory, when it comes to a rainy race, it's less about the speed of the driver's kart, but more about the driver ability for a race like this one today. Haber up by 0.4 of a second. Nick Patton jumps to second in qualifying. Lynch and Goldman still down on the pylon. The driver that joined in on the section was Nicholas Nussman. So right now, you see some drivers getting the caution flags displayed around the racetrack with some of the karts having some issues here on the racing circuit. It's been that type of a tricky session with the separation with under 2 minutes to go on this group. You right now continue to see things stay wet. The grip levels stay very difficult. Now I believe we may have Nate. Do you have a copy, good sir?
I have a copy, Justin.
Well, it's been tricky today, and it's a tricky race for the drivers today. Your thoughts on these conditions today, as it is expected to rain all day here at K1 Circuit Whiteland.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a tricky one for these drivers. The rainy conditions are not going to be easy at all, especially with it being some semi-cold conditions as well. The cloud cover with not getting a lot of heat into that track to warm it up and get the grip levels up. So it'll be tricky for them, but at least they have this constant throughout the day of this one track surface and the wet throughout the day.
And as well, keep in mind these drivers have the rain tires, of course, to factor in. How does this impact what you expect racing-wise, especially knowing what we may see here? Braden Heber, for reference, having a 1/10 of a second advantage, Heber should say, trying to hold on to that in this group, and is going to hold on for now. These drivers are going to have potentially a tough one in terms of making sure they are able to get good track position in the racing today with the separations we've seen in the session alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be some interesting racing. I've been to Whiteland for a few years now. Never seen any wet on-track action before, so kind of expected to go to a one-line fits-all type style of racing in certain parts of the track, especially the old circuit. But once we get into the newer layout towards the back half of the track, I think we could see almost like NASCAR, a few different drivers trying some different lines throughout that back section.
That session ended with Haber at the top of the board for medium, by the way. Nick Patton, Nicholas Nossman, Levi Wilbur, Andrew Goldman, Logan Lynch was the lineup in the session. You also have Yusuf Durtang, who did not hit the racetrack, sorted in 7th. Our next competitors now heading onto the racetrack are K8 Junior. And how did the juniors fare out the last time they raced? Well, a couple weeks ago, AJ Stoner came away with the win in the final. 245-point day. Evan Patton in second of the points coming in. Ryan Moore picked up a heat race win, is third in the standings. Andrew Avalos and Lucian Laser amongst the top 5 in their point standings. They're underway in the session with Patton, Laser, as well as Andrew Avalos and Mason Gallion in the field today, and you're a part of that call the last time out for these drivers. What do you think about the racing in round number 1? And how do you think these drivers will carry some momentum into round number 2 today?
Yeah, it was a great day of racing for round 1 just a couple weeks ago. It was fun to watch, fun to call, especially this K100 junior class. Evan Patton, the AMAX driver, seems like he's the one to beat today, at least from how we saw him get on last weekend. But of course, the rain being the great equalizer, as we all like to call it, I could see a couple new faces come to the top of this field.
Interesting enough, when it comes to the practice earlier, it was Mason Gallion who set the fastest time in the 45.3s. He's right now amongst those at the bottom of the board at this time, though. Lucian Laser put a 45.8 to start off this session. Racing some drivers make some passes to get some clean air around this circuit. You get to see some of the rain puddles and the rooster tails just kicking up around this racetrack too. That's going to make it interesting if people are going to be able to maintain the racing line, if they're going to be able to stick to the racetrack with these rain tires.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially corners like this in what would be a uphill hairpin going the other direction is now a downhill off camber, really tricky in the dry. And now you put in wet conditions in there as well with a little bit of rhino liner that makes the track really slippery at that apex. That's going to make things interesting, and it's going to be a difficult one for these drivers. You can see they're just trying to hold the rear end of the kart under grasp as they're making their way onto the front straight there. A lot of them avoiding the very inside line there, avoiding the rubber going around it, doing the starting line that we talk about so often, but this is where it gets interesting, Justin, is when you don't have a ton of room like you do on that new section. When you get to the really tight and twisty stuff of the old layout, is you're probably going to have to deal with that the rubber on that inside line, have to deal with a kart that doesn't want to turn, doesn't want to grip as well, and that's going to be a challenge for these drivers today.
You can see it with some of the corner exits right now too, and some of the wider sections here. These drivers are just about drifting their way through these corners on the entries and slipping and sliding. Mason Gallion now is top of the board, 45.278 last time by. This time by, Laser does put up a personal best, but is still 4/10 off the pole time. Evan Patton just holding on to third in the 46-second bracket. So at this point, a big change to what we've seen potentially early on in the season. Gallion, for reference, in the dry was only 6th best in round number 1. And that's where that big equalizer comes into play. Some people drive better in the rain, Nate. Others might not be having that experience in the rain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's cool to see Gallion up there like you touched on. He wasn't really in the fight or in the drivers we were mentioning who would possibly win last time as one kart goes around there. It's tricky conditions in the dry to get the kart set up and to grip through there. Now it's thrown in the wet. It's even more difficult for these drivers, but really good run for Gallion so far. 3/10 clear of Zier in third with that 45.2. So close to getting to the 44s, but we'll have to see if the track continues to ramp up.
Definitely keep an eye on things here for these competitors. As the qualifying session reaches zeros, checker flag should be coming up here for these competitors now. See it down the front straightaway in the very wet front straightaway cam. Lucian Laser comes away second in session. Patton in third. They lock up their times. Gallion improves to a 45 flat. Andrew Avalos will be the last of the drivers in this group. He did not improve, stayed in the 47-second bracket. Right now, already 4 Arbor groups complete here, Nate.
Yeah, just touching on it quick too, especially like what we were talking about with not a great run for Gallion last time around. For him to be able to be this quick already in qualifying could be very good for his points run. Of course, you get 2 drops here for the Indy Karting Challenge. Last weekend might be one of those for him, and especially a confidence-boosting weekend as we're ready racing today, so not a lot of time to talk in between sessions as the next class is already ready to roll.
Yeah, everybody going straight to the track within seconds here with already those delays touched upon earlier on today for the weather conditions to start off the festivities. And now this brings us to KA Senior and Masters. And these drivers look to get sorted out quickly. KA Senior and Master, how did things fare out for them coming in from the last time? Elijah Fox swept the way for points over AJ Lund. Then it's Raider Santos that's got a 1 point advantage over Blake Finley coming into today in the standings, 215 214. Hudson Potter rounding out the top 5 in this group. Macy Gallion amongst the drivers here as the seniors are now on track. And once this qualifying session, we are underway for our next grouping. As one driver does have a transmitter problem, the rest of the field seems to be okay here as the top 4 all stay in a pack and at least 2 of them miss one of the apexes there.
Yeah, and not to mention one driver going off in the exit of the banked corner. It was barely hard to see that one, but a really tricky corner for these wet conditions. You've seen a lot of drivers make mistakes there in years past, Eli Warren being one of them, a winner on the national scene and on numerous occasions at the regional level, made that mistake just last year going off in that exact same spot. So you have to think, Justin, that these drivers are probably a little bit thankful that they don't have to go the reverse direction in the rain and take on that banked corner at 60, 65 plus miles an hour.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And these drivers have to be able to see what they can do with 46 sixes being the norm right now. Raider Santos at the top of the board over AJ Lund. Then we have Jebediah Jonas in 4, Blake Finley up there as well. They bump up their times, 45.7 now for Lund. And we've seen good speed past couple seasons when thinking back to what Lund has been able to do here. How did they do last session for the KA senior side of things? By the way, Lund did put up a time of 45.6 for reference. So he's right on the baseline, but he's got Jebediah Jonas providing some pressure within a tenth of a second right now.
Yeah, it's all very close in K100 Senior, as it always is. They're making the way onto the front straight. That final corner of the track is really tricky because it's a long right-hander, and especially in the rain, you're just waiting to get on power. And you've seen it throughout the coverage so far today of drivers just getting a little bit too eager on that gas pedal and getting it down to where the rear end starts to slip out, and you're going to lose a ton of time down that front straight.
Indeed. So you see some of the separation for some of the drivers at the back of the grouping right now. Front of the grouping all settled together to the point where they're getting a little bit racy now for the third spot in the queue. See where the times now fall this time by. Already less than 90 seconds to go in session. Your contact for the drivers third in line there. As they now work side by side. AJ Lund puts up a 45-1. Another purple. Lund is flying out there on the track.
Yeah, drivers are starting to find time. Is AJ Lund one driver around? Can't quite get an idea on that, but they'll get going. Again, that's just one of the trickier corners on the track that they'll be having to get used to today. But as you can see there, AJ Lund leading the way, going very wide through a couple of these corners just to avoid the rubber buildup on the apex of the corners. You'll probably see that again through here, as still you can see a better shot of it there. Raider Santos going way wide, cutting in at the last second to get the best run on to the straightaway. So as the wet conditions continue, it doesn't seem like we're seeing any sort of a dry line here, Justin. Yes, we are very early on in the day. We still have an entire afternoon group to go, but the track condition and how it changes from session to session is going to be one to look out for.
Especially with the expected harder rains for parts of the afternoon for today. Checker flag should be out here. Lund has been flying out there. He's been consistently in the low 45-second bracket throughout this session. And he'll end things off with another good lap, but a better one for Raider Santos. He takes the pole away with the heater to end the session with a 44.9, a 0.2 of a second advantage for the pole. Jonas comes away third, Blake Finley in fifth, Macy Gallion in sixth, Dane Van Dyke in the seventh position as they close out this group.
A good run there for Raider. Got on the podium last time out, so now to be on pole position for today's races. That'll be good for the AMAX driver in his championship charge. We'll have to see what he can do later on in the day and if he can back that up. Not as big of a gap as we saw from first to second, from KA Junior to now KA Senior, just like you can see there, that 10.5 between himself and AJ Lund. So definitely looking forward to that battle, Justin. AJ, like you said, has been very fast around Whiteland Raceway Park before. K1 Circuit Whiteland, both in Indy Karting Challenge and Route 66 Sprint Series competition. So looking forward to those two doing battle.
That brings us to our final grouping of drivers getting ready to come out from the gates. The next little bit, we're just waiting for these drivers to get sorted out here. Our last grouping is 206 Legends and Supermasters. And these drivers have a bit of a smaller group here today, Nate, but there was a class change for these drivers in our final group. They made an adjustment for this class where they originally, the Masters, the Legends, and the Supermasters together. They split the Masters off from the Legends and Supermasters group, though, so they'll be running them as two separate run groups going forward after that initial start to the season.
Yeah, like you said, that change happening, I think, about a week ago in the official communications between the track and the drivers. We'll have to see how it goes. Personally, was a fan of the multi-class racing we saw in the opening weekend. It was really cool to see the dynamics between the different classes and fighting for overall win. But still, the level of competition is fairly high for this class. These two split classes now. So still getting the same entertaining on-track action, just two more sessions for you each day.
Here we go. Now they are on the racetrack for our final qualifying grouping. Before we head behind the paywall, get ready to go racing for our heats. Remember the heat format, 5 minutes plus 2 laps for today. In the finals, you add an extra 5 minutes, a 10-minute plus 2 lap day for each of these drivers for the even rounds is per the roster organization. So we're underway for our final qualifying grouping. Looks like each of them wanting to separate out a lot more compared to some of the other cars earlier on. Tom Harleman, who was very much looking forward to the rain on the social medias and the groups coming in, will lead this group. Chad Kane, also a part of the Legends for these drivers. Richard Lemasters was the only driver in the practice and now in the qualifying to take part in the Supermaster class. So things are looking great for the points for the 82 kart. Tom and Chad, we'll have to see how they battle on the track today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, everyone's just trying to get a little bit of space for themselves. They know they only got 3 on there and on track, so they can find their own rhythm. They can not have to feel pressured from a driver in front or behind. Just have to focus on your lap and get the job done. Of course, with the wet weather, the cold conditions, not a lot of drivers turning out for this one. So this could be an interesting one for drops, as a lot of drivers will be using that early on in the season. They'll be looking for that late championship run towards the end of this IKC season. But until then, still have three very talented drivers in their own respect on track now that hopefully in a couple moments we'll get a glimpse of what times will be on the ticker. As you can see there, still drivers just going very wide in what was originally turn 9 on this layout, and almost getting a bit of a slingshot effect onto this front straight as crossing the timing and scoring beacon for the first time. These drivers setting down their laps in qualifying.
48.329 was the time for Tom Harleman, a 52.5 for Chad King. Still looking to see what Lemaster's time is going to be, because his first initial time around the beacon was a 1 minute time period. Believe he may not be turning more laps at the moment, though. Oh, if that. So, some drivers just electing to say, I've got the kart working, let's finish things off. Don't blame those in the one classification. But for some of the others, it's about seeing how they can get themselves through the rainy conditions. You're looking at Chad King. Chad King being very careful, it looks like, around this course, almost tiptoeing.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to bend the chassis up early in the day or put in a wall or anything to make you really rush to fix the kart. Of course, with the afternoon and morning group splits that you have here at IKC, you don't have as much time in between sessions as you normally would for another racing series, whether it be club to national level. So that's just another thing you have to count into it. But, if you're in the paddock and you choose not to go out for qualifying, it's a little interesting because, or not to do the full session, I should say, because these conditions are going to stay for the rest of the day. So, of course, you're going to want to get a feel for where the puddles are, where the grip is, and, of course, if there's more rain racing later on in the year, to have a day like today underneath your belt is some very valuable track time indeed.
Kind of see some of the layout differences compared to what we normally have seen before today. Drivers were expected to make that quick turn towards the right from the start and finish line. Instead, you have that longer straightaway, and before you have a cut through, as said, with this layout. So a bit more different than what we normally see. The drivers do get the layout changed each race to where it's different each time out. But of course, we were originally going to have a couple more corner complexes today with the rain, keeping things a lot more simplified, to say the least. Drivers will now take the checker flag this time around as they close out qualifying here. Can confirm the Masters only turned the one lap. And in the end, Tom Harleman holding on to the top spot by 4 seconds, just about, in the Legends and the Supermaster for 206s. Nate, that means one more thing. We're about to go behind the paywall and get ready for some heat racing soon. Your thoughts on qualifying as it speedily went through here this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should be in for some good racing as drivers continue to figure out where the time is on this track. You're not going to want to miss it. I think we're going to see some close, thrilling racing in this morning group.
Overall, what are some of the keys to a good race in the end, you think, for the conditions today?
Especially in the rain around a tricky track like K1 Circuit Whiteland, just keep all four wheels on the track as much as you can. You don't want to make any mistakes, so that's going to be the key to my race, at least today. Just keep it in a straight line and stay on track.
We'll send you behind the paywall as we continue our coverage of the 2025 Indy Karting Challenge. Our second round of the season continues after we go behind the wall.